Good evening and welcome to The Coalition. My name is Dave Fisher. I'm the co-host of the show here. My friend Pat Ford will be joining us on the phone in just a minute. And we like to say we are loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient radio. You can find us on the web at www.coalitionradio.us, on the mighty Facebook at The Coalition Radio /The Coalition Radio, and on Twitter and Instagram at Coalition_radio. We have some very special guests in the studio this evening and another calling in for the second segment of our show. It appears, folks, in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island General Assembly ended its session this week with a mild whimper, as it were, leaving much legislation on the table, lots of good bills. Died in committee, never made it to the floor, and lots of bills that were really bad for the state actually got passed, including a budget that merely codifies the cronyism that has crippled this state for the last 40 years. So one of the things that sticks in my craw, I think a legislation that definitely should have been passed through was the expanded Good Samaritan Act that would protect people from criminal prosecution when calling 911 in the cases of drug overdose. This is a law that will sunset as of July 1st. And this is not people driving with dogs on their laps. This is not snow blowing off people's cars. This is not people being able to sell brownies and cookies at polling locations on election day. This is people's lives that we're talking about here, folks. And the, quote, leaders in our General Assembly saw fit to let this law die, which it will lead to more people dying of drug overdoses because people's reaction won't be to immediately call 911. Their reactions will be like, oh, geez, let's clean the place up a little bit before we call the ambulance. And I think it's a tragedy, and I find it completely repugnant that they let that law die. So that's my commentary here for the week. Joining on the phone is, as everybody knows, Pat from Cumberland, my co-host, Pat Ford. You there?
Broadcasting from the bunker underneath Park Avenue, near a certain bridge from the Under the Bunker headquarters, the worldwide headquarters of Coalition Radio. Good to hear your voice. Well, it's a little interesting to be on the other side of the phone.
It's weird sitting at the head of the table here. I'm in the big boy chair today. You know, I'm not.
You're in the Vincent A. Buddy.
I'm in the Batman chair, not the Robin chair.
There you go. Well, remember, you can take over the world here because you are broadcasting live from WPRO, the station of record in Rhode Island. And listen, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what a travesty. We obsess over Gina Raimondi's flight to fancy, their latest effort in confiscatory taxes, playing whack-a-mole with the Rhode Island taxpayer. All the while, the bills that affect and change and end people's lives are sit there in the bucket, if you will, just left to fester. Without any clear direction. It seemed like this entire legislative session was an exercise in, hey, Judy, let's do a show. Yeah, let's make some tax this week. And as a
Judy.
Lurch from perceived crisis to the next, some real, some invented. As I mentioned on the Matt Allen show, after watching them condemn this bridge in Cranston, I'm suggesting that people not sit in the pleasure seats at McCoy any time this week, because who knows? I have this mental image of, Hermatiello, Paulie Walnuts underneath the stands, filing away at the structure to see if we can get something interesting there. Hey, yeah, Gino did it. Yeah, I guess there's weights, huh? Yeah, well, if we crash the stadium, they'll have to build a new one.
As you know, the whole bridge thing, reminded me of one of my favorite films of all time, Academy Award winner, Best Picture, 1957, Bridge on the River Kwai, where that seminal final scene with Alec Guinness, who our younger listeners probably know as Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars movies, when the bridge blows up and he just says, madness, madness, madness!
To which I say, monorail,
right.
Monorail.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. So what have we got?
Well, let's get right into it. We're running a little long here with the banter, I think. But in the studio right now we have Sharon Steele and Dr. Tim Emke, who have been two of the most vocal critics and opponents of the Providence Stadium deal both of them had a big hand in getting people together for this rally this past week on what turned out to be the General Assembly's final day of sessions, which actually worked out pretty well. Of course, David Norton for organizing Pawtucket, really another driving force. We had him call into the show a couple weeks ago. So we wanted to have them in and give us a recap and say, what the future of their movement here, the future of their opposition is going to be. So Sharon, Dr. Amke, welcome to the coalition.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today.
Thank you very much.
So would you? I mean, I think the rally went over like gangbusters. I mean, my count was a little over 100 people there, which for 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, it's tough to get anybody out even at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to some of these things. But so I think that was a pretty good turnout. Would you call the rally a success?
We would call the rally a success, and our counts are just a tad higher. 120, between 125 and 150 from our count, but it built pretty nicely. And of course, we like to think that we did it on Thursday because we knew that was going to be the last day of the legislature. So
that's how we'll write it up.
That's the way we want you to write it up.
Well, I have to applaud your efforts. I mean, what's outstanding about what the folks in Providence have done and Mr. Norton's folks in Pawtucket have demonstrated that, number one, it's truly a grassroots effort. These are individual citizens, many of whom have never really been political before. Number two, it crossed currents across ethnic backgrounds, economic backgrounds, neighborhoods. It's really the mixed fabric of Rhode Island is represented at these rallies and in the opposition. And number three, it reflects on a level of outrage but also political skill that's being demonstrated by these grassroots groups, all right, in saying, they've reached that moment, that tipping point when enough is enough. So my hat's off to you for demonstrating, for getting right up into the grill, for making it personal, and advancing the cause of the ordinary citizen. So, congratulations on a wonderful effort.
And congratulations for being now part of what we call on the coalition are heroes of civil disobedience. You've made the upper echelon.
Thank you.
We have new titles.
Yeah, it's just so important. Chad, Dr. Amke, just let me know what your thought is. I mean, the narrative that, and we refer to him as Paulie Walnuts, Herr Mattiello, after a seminal figure in The Sopranos. His narrative continues to be that the people want this. So what say you?
Well, here's what I say. The governor's office has received lots and lots of emails, letters, phone calls, and 98% of what has gone into the governor's office says a resounding no to the stadium. Okay, so if that, in fact, is the will of the people and the wish of the taxpayer, then it is Mattiello's job to do our bidding, because we have a voice and we have a vote, and we need to use both of those and use them well.
Now, Dr. Amke, can I call you Tim, or do you prefer Dr. Amke?
No, please, Tim is fine.
Okay. So you've kind of been a one-man army for this protest, this opposition movement. I mean, standing out there on what was it, on Gano Street, you were out there most days, down on Hope Street, yep. Just standing there with your sign, no public funds, no tax subsidies. You are both Providence residents, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so, as a Providence resident, what is the kind of the sticks in your craw most about this whole deal, or even entertaining the idea of a public financing of something of this nature?
Well, I would count myself in that first group that you mentioned, of somebody who has not been politically active previously, but who has been following the politics in Rhode Island as an interested citizen for many years. 3 years ago, my taxes went up 30% suddenly in Providence, and basically as a result of mismanagement in city affairs over a number of years. So when this demand basically came through from the PawSox in the first part of this year, I just wasn't going to have any, I just wasn't going to let this stand. And I thought my initial my initial reaction as a sort of citizen taxpayer was to think, what could I do, simply? And that led me to creating some signs, standing out on some street corners, and beginning to spread the word. And a nice thing happened to me on the very first morning I was out. Somebody came by, took my picture. By the time I got home, an hour later, it was on the internet, and people were asking me about my participation, how they could join me, how they could support that effort. That led to my getting connected with Sharon and Sam and others, and it's just developed from there.
So, Sharon, tell us a little bit about this protest drive that you've got going on in Providence. Now, this is something that is involved. I mean, this is a provision in the city charter of the city of Providence. So
Correct.
Just tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so pursuant to Section 209 of the Providence Home Rule Charter, we have the ability to petition the city council to enact an ordinance. And so what we have done is we have sought signatures. We need 1,000. We are very happy to say we have 1,200 and counting. And we are calling this ordinance an ordinance establishing rules for new stadiums. And it says fairly simply, no stadium or athletic facility shall be a permissible use of the land designated as parcel P4 in the I-195 district. Every new stadium constructed in the city of Providence shall pay property tax at the full commercial rate on the assessed value. No public money from the city of Providence shall be used directly or indirectly to subsidize or otherwise provide any financial benefit to any new stadium.
Well, that is pretty succinct and directly to the point. I'm feeling a little Sam Bell in those words.
Are you feeling a little Sam
I'm
Bell?
Feeling a little Sam Bell in there.
Yeah, well, Sam Bell had a lot to do with that.
He's a bright fella, and you know, certainly is passionate about this stadium issue. So you know, it's great that you guys hooked up with him. So you get 1,200 signatures at this point. Okay, so at 1,200 signatures, does this get your resolution in front of the city council?
It does. And
Okay.
the plan, so that I can sort of flesh it out for you maybe a little bit. And the first thing that's really, really important is to talk about who this core is, who have what I would like to call the steering committee. And it consists of Sam Bell, Suzanne Mark, David Josephson, Tim Emke, David Norton, and myself. And though David Norton comes at this from a different perspective, because it's the Pawtucket perspective, we all are coming at this from being longstanding residents and taxpayers of Providence. And my background is 35 years in real estate brokerage and consulting. And part of the problem with what I do is that I probably know where all the bodies are buried. And so when you see things and you see the kinds of demands that were being made by Lucchino and his minions, you begin to say there's something else going on here that we can't quite see yet.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
There you go. And to that end, we have come up with a rather, I think, clever little hashtag called 38 Stadium. And that should perhaps bring back the memory of 38 Studios and how we are so hopeful that the taxpayers of Providence in Rhode Island will not once again be forced to support something that is yet another bad bet that our legislature has made.
Now, hey, Pat.
Yeah.
You're still with us, right? I know you had something you wanted to bring up about the charter in the city of Providence.
So now, at this point, I mean, if you can clear up, you know, someone like myself I'm not an expert, but I clearly try to play one on the radio. The the legal status of this amendment. I mean, where do we go in terms of the actual legal process with the city council?
Okay, so here's what happens. I sort of started down that road and I took a little side turn. The legal process goes like this. We are placed on the agenda. We